We're going to get started maybe in another 5-ish minutes. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late. We're hearing that people are en route. They're just having some difficulties finding parking. So thank you for bearing with us. Drinks are in the hallway and restrooms are in the hallway as well. Testing. If we could have all candidates make their way to the stage. We are waiting on one candidate, so we might shuffle some chairs around, but we're going to try to get started in the next couple minutes. I know we're running a little late. Thank you for your patience and flexibility.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know there have been many forums, so we are honored that you have chosen ours, the most important topic in Nashville, housing. Am I right? Can I get a round of applause? Woo! So thank you all again for showing up. My name is Nia, and I'm a founding member of RUN, Renters Union Nashville. We're an autonomous tenant union run by renters. We organize to bring affordable, dignified, and equitable housing to all in Nashville. We aim to hold landlords accountable and to give tenants decision-making power in the city. We expect elected officials to support the large number of renters in this city. We helped collect questions for today through a workshop at our general meeting and with a survey that I'm gonna allow Edward to talk some more on.
Thanks, Nia. I appreciate that. My name is Edward. I am the program coordinator for the outreach team at Open Table Nashville. Open Table Nashville, hopefully you know a lot about, but just in case, we are an outreach organization. We do advocacy with our homeless friends on the street here in this city. We are doing our best to bring everyone in the community's efforts and ideas into the collective space. And in that spirit, we have decided to hold a mass survey. We went to almost every single camp in this city. We have spoken to dozens and hundreds of renters all across this city to gather questions, to figure out what do homeless folks, hopeful renters want to become and think and do and act in this city. And in that spirit, that's the questions that you'll be hearing, hopefully the candidates answer today. If you want to hear more about Open Table Nashville, go to our website. We have like every social media under the sun, and our annual event is happening October 19th. I'll be introducing our moderator today. I'm a personal big fan of his. I can't tell you how many times I've had a slightly too long of a lunch break just for listening to it in my car on the way back to the office. Khalil Ekalone is an integral host of This is Nashville, the flagship daily show on WPLN 90.3 FM. He got his start as the co-host of Good Day New Mexico in Albuquerque. From there, he became a correspondent with New Mexico Public Television and a sports anchor at UP Public Network. In 2019, he began working with NPR affiliate KUNM. There, he co-produced and hosted Your New Mexico Government and the award-winning podcast No More Normal, both of which covered the government, world, and local events during the pandemic. His life has been full of colorful experiences that have alleviated him opportunities to explore curiosity and wonder. He's worked as an educator in television and film production and the music industry as the co-founder of the hip-hop group Fresh Air. He is a dedicated cat dad and loves to find laughter because it's the perfect way to heal any world. Please welcome Khalil.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Awesome, thank you for that warm round of applause and welcome. Okay, so we're gonna break this down. This is a very different type of forum that we may be used to. I know I heard one of the candidates mention that there was like over 112 forums so far. It kind of feels like that. And they're not done, so I don't envy any of you. But I'm gonna give you a rundown of how today's afternoon is going to go. We're gonna be asking 6 questions in total. They're long form answers with 2 short follow-ups and 7 trivia questions. The order in which the candidates are sitting will represent the order in which they will answer the questions. Numbers were drawn at random by the candidates before we started, so this wasn't some maniacal plan from anyone. Candidates, they have received the long and short answer questions ahead of time, but the trivia questions are all gonna be brand new to everyone. Should be exciting to hear what they come up with. You know, all of the questions were from people renting in Nashville and or with a history of homelessness. Each candidate, you get 2 30-second rebuttals that you can use at any point in time, even if your name isn't mentioned. But after the 2, that's it. You can't phone a friend, you can't call in, there will be no lifelines. We will end the evening with time for live audience questions, so please be thinking about, you may want to ask one specific candidate. All right, with that, we're gonna introduce, starting from, I guess, stage right. Anybody familiar with theater? Sharon Hurt, we've got Jim Gingrich, we've got Freddie O'Connell. Then there's Heidi Campbell, Vivian Wilhoy, Jeff Yarbrough, Natisha Brooks, and finally, Matt Wilshire. Now, this is a different type of forum because we do want to hear from y'all, the audience. We want a little bit, there you go, that's what I'm saying. We want to hear some audience feedback. Please let everyone know how you feel about particular answers that a candidate or all of the candidates have given. Okay, you guys ready to start? All right, we're gonna get this going. Question number 1, cost. Candidates, you have 60 seconds to answer. And seat 1, Sharon Hurt, you will answer first. We're gonna start with this question about the cost of housing in Nashville. A recent National Low-Income Housing Coalition report found that a housing wage for the Nashville area is $27.04 per hour. That's how much you must make per hour to spend no more than 30% of your income on the fair market price of a 1-bedroom rental. Our next mayor will need to employ any and all creative solutions to drive down the cost of housing for all Nashvillians, especially in the face of largely stagnant wages. So, What specific policies or initiatives would you implement to stabilize or drive down market rents in Nashville? Sharon Hurt.
Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for that question. Affordable housing is not a single issue. I don't think that the market is going to go down. So my intent is to raise salaries and wages. You know, when you look at the transit, the wages, the workforce, all of those things not working together, then in the rising costs that we have, you know, just with inflation, as well as the increase of valuation of homes, people are suffering. And the policies are difficult to implement because our state government are preempting everything that we're trying to do when we need to have some inclusion. So I think that what we're going to have to do is seek more programs, like some tax release for our landlords, tax release for our developers, so they can pass that on to those renters that we have. I think it's going to also be necessary for us to create some type of
All right,
local.
that is time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to move. Jim Gingrich.
Good afternoon. My name's Jim Gingrich. You know, affordable housing is a topic we've probably talked about for at least a decade. You go back and look at the 2015 mayoral forums. It was a topic then. The only thing that's changed is it is worse. We have multiple studies that have been done over that time period that tell us that that's the case. At this point, we literally need tens of thousands of units of affordable housing if we hope to stabilize prices. There are really three things that we can do. One is you have to properly fund the Barnes Fund to turbocharge the private sector, or turbocharge the public sector. Secondly, there is land that we own as a city that we can use. But most importantly, the only way that we're going to be able to build the tens of thousands of units that we need or continue to refurbish units is through the private sector. And we need to make it much easier for the private sector to build affordable housing. We should not be among the most difficult cities in the United States to build affordable housing. That starts with cutting red tape.
All right, that is time. Freddie O'Connell.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Freddie O'Connell. I'm excited to be here with you running for mayor because this is the topic we need to address. We need to make it easier for people to stay here. The mayor has a few key things to do here. We will build housing, we will build transit. Those are the two best ways to tackle both our cost of living and quality of life issues. And the mayor has a lot that we can do here, from issuing general obligation bonds for housing projects as a revenue source, to working on Nashville Next and improving it for the delivery of housing in the first place, to coordinating our development services to get out of our own way when affordable housing projects right now are stuck in Metro's permitting processes. We also should make sure that we maximize the enrollment in our property tax freeze and relief programs so people can stay in their home, take advantage of programs like Home Uplift so we bring down the cost of utilities. But the household cost of transportation is almost on par with housing, so that is exactly why we need transit. And the wage side, we know that I've been part of a council that has improved wages for public employees, teachers, first responders, support staff, and substitute teachers, and I expect to continue doing that.
That is
Thanks so much.
time. All right. Heidi Campbell.
So it's an economic issue. It revolves around supply and demand, but it also revolves around making sure that we're paying people a living wage. We have to do all of those things. We first need to start with a comprehensive assessment of our public lands and identify public plots that are viable for affordable housing. And yes, we do need to streamline our permitting process because I talk to developers who would like to build affordable housing, but they can't do it because there are bottlenecks in our process. So those opportunity costs are costing all of us, and we have to do everything we can to address those things. And then, of course, we do need to continue to support funds like the Barnes Fund, but that's not building nearly enough affordable housing. So we have to do everything that we can to expedite that process.
All right.
So it's everything that my colleagues have just said before. Thank you. I'm Vivian Wilhoit. I'm running for mayor, and I ask you for your vote. When I started out, one of the first things I talked about as the assessor of property is that we've identified property that's owned by Metro government, vacant land, vacant buildings that we can use for affordable housing, more or less for inclusionary housing, in order to increase our housing stock. We know the reason why rent is so high and why buying a home is so difficult is because of the supply and demand. We must have more supply to drive down the cost. So first, we have to use some of the things we have right now: vacant land, vacant building. Additionally, I work with Representative Love as the representative in order to increase the income for someone to qualify for the tax freeze and relief programs. When I first went into the office, that was one of the first things I recognized in bringing Noah into the office, saying, hey, Noah, values are going up. I ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Jeff Yarbrough.
Good afternoon, I'm Jeff Yarbrough. I love this question because over the last 12 years, we've seen about a 150% increase in rent, while we have not seen wages keep up with that at all. We have to do a lot. One, I supported Representative Love in that effort to expand the income rate that we can use for property tax freezes. I think it's important that we focus significantly on preserving affordability where it is. Another proposal that we've looked at is trying to figure out how we do property tax abatements for the nonprofits who are actually offering sub-market rent. We have to do what Jim mentioned, which is leverage our public land and Barnes Fund to significantly increase what we're doing on the public-private partnership side. But fundamentally, you can't solve this problem unless you're dealing with the fact that we don't have enough places to live, and we have a lot more people who want to live here than we got places. We have to deal with transit-oriented development to go denser and higher and create more affordable housing so that we're really bringing the private sector into the game.
Letitia Brooks.
Good afternoon. As a 33-year retired special ed, emphasis on autism, this forum means a lot to me. One, we need to talk about the property taxes and take them back to the assessments where they were pre-COVID. That's why your rent is high. Second, it's the truth. Second, what we need to talk about is our teachers, our artists, those that necessarily don't have a college degree, that we have units and work with those apartments, landlords that are willing to work with us to possibly, and I'm thinking of this, of vouchers, working with the state to have voucher systems for those that cannot afford the full rent, something like HUD, but have a voucher system. Last but not least that we need to talk about is that transit. The definition of capitalism is the ability to be able to move to get to work.
That is time. Matt Wilshire.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Wilshire. It's great to be with you all this afternoon, and it's great to be hearing about all these ideas that I have actually worked to implement. So when I was in the mayor's office, I helped create the Barnes Fund. When I worked with MDHA to actually create Ryman Lofts. And after a career in the mayor's office where we helped add jobs for 42,000 Nashvillians and raise wages for folks across the city and lower the income gap, lower income disparities in this city, I moved in 2019 to MDHA to actually implement a plan. Now that plan was put on the shelf by the following administration, but we pivoted and we were still able in just 5 years to open up 500 new mixed income units on Casey, helping to transform that area from concentrated poverty into a thriving mixed income neighborhood. And we helped develop, with the private sector, over 3,500 units. We know what the tools are. I've done it.
Thank you all very much for the first round of questions. We're moving on to question number 2, which focuses on funding. Seat number 2, Jim Gingrich, you will answer first in this round. Interesting that some of you all mentioned the Barnes Fund, because the Barnes Fund is the only Metro-funded and operated pot of money that is dedicated to build affordable housing units. Each year, we have to advocate for increased funding because we don't have a dedicated funding source. All of you have said in one way or another that you support the Barnes Fund and you want to increase the supply of housing we're building. What we want to know is, where do you plan to draw revenues from to do that? Will you reallocate dollars from other areas, or will you earmark new funding streams? Each candidate, you have 60 seconds to respond, starting with you, Jim Gingrich.
So I got an idea. Maybe we should stop giving away the store every time a billionaire wants to build a new sporting stadium or racetrack. That might save us a few dollars. You know, our city government today does spend 70% more for everybody who lives in Davidson County than it spent 10 years ago. There is opportunity to modernize our city government so it is more effective and more efficient, and that's what we're going to have to do because we do need to free up dollars for priorities like the Barnes Fund. Like, Matt referenced the pilot program. I'm assuming that's the pilot program that Megan Barry passed or introduced in 2015 that I'm glad he's now taking credit for when he was at MDHA. But those are in terms of property tax abatements, those are the types of things that the city can do. But most of this money is going to have to come from the private sector. And it's really us facilitating as a city, whether or not that is cutting red tape or putting in place more creative financial incentives.
Freddie O'Connell.
Khalil, may I have one of my 30-second rebuttals, please?
There you go. You got it, Matt.
Thank you very much. And so I was called out specifically. Jim, thank you. You may not know because you were living in New York at the time, but I literally wrote that policy. I literally worked with MDHA to address the issue that low-income housing tax credit properties were being double taxed by the state. Nashville, Tennessee is the only state in the union that has it, so I wrote the policy, which the council then passed. So thank you for calling that out. And it is absolutely how we've helped accelerate LIHTC development in Nashville.
All right,
and it's
that's
an example
time
of
right
creative
there.
policy to solve
Jim
problems.
Gingrich, if you want to rebut the rebuttal, or we can move on to Freddie O'Connell.
Matt, I didn't say you weren't involved in putting together that policy. I was just explaining what that policy was that enabled those units to happen.
Well, all right. Freddie O'Connell.
Great. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Barnes Housing Trust Fund is a fund within Nashville that was named for the Reverend Bill Barnes, and a couple of the things that he was focused on were deconcentrating poverty, and the way we look to do that is through mixed income communities. This is a Metro-funded pool of money that typically allows for the leveraging of each dollar that goes into the fund to find $6 elsewhere in the market to create affordable housing. So it's a big deal to fund it. For the past 3 years, one of the key recommendations of the Affordable Housing Task Force report was to fund it to $30 million for 3 years in a row. For 2 years in a row, the mayor's recommended budget didn't do that, so council stepped in, and I was a part of a coalition that made sure that happened. This year, we finally did get that $30 million in the budget that's recommended. Council approved it, so for the past 3 years, we've had more than $100 million going to the Barnes Fund. This is a big deal, because that effectively means we're gonna have $700 million worth of housing. We're finally gonna hit 5,000 goals. Now, the Affordable Housing Task Force report is also full of recommendations for ways to supplement.
That's time right there.
And we'll do those.
Heidi Campbell.
So we need a mayor that does not see this as something to sit around and talk about the wonky data of things, but to actually see this as a fundraising job. The job of getting tourism to boom downtown was taken on by mayors and groups of people, and look how well they did. It's a matter of values and priorities. And as a mayor, I have always worked hard to raise the funds and to advocate for things that matter. And so it's more of a question about will. And that is something that, that I have always done and always will do, and that's my promise to you.
All right. Vivian, you want a rebuttal?
Yeah, I would say mayors it's really important not to lower the expectations for the job of what the mayor is. It's important to have a mayor who knows how to use the tools of Metro. That is exactly why we got the $30 million in there. If you didn't know that the Affordable Housing Task Force report called for funding levels that were higher than what we were doing, council could have just sat there and accepted the mayor's recommendations. We didn't. We fought for more. We also fought against a $15 million increase of parking that was private on the most dangerous corridor on Nolensville Road, because we knew what the community needed was
All
sidewalk.
right, that's time right there. Heidi, I'm gonna give you an answer if you want a quick, very brief statement.
Yeah, I didn't say that you don't need to know what's going on. I said that you need to be a passionate advocate for what you believe in.
All right. Okay. Vivian Wilhoit.
And that's a segue. I'm a passionate advocate for what I believe in is affordable housing. So my point is that earlier we were talking about, and I heard one of my colleagues just say about the increasing and fighting for the $30 million. Well, great. That's the type of passionate leadership that you need. I have already stated that I would be passionate about increasing the Barnes Fund to $75 million. Because why? It is necessary, and because that's the only funding that we have in our government to be able to bring about affordable housing. And then there's another thing. If we can bring big businesses here, if we can bring, sports entertainment here, we should be able to tell them, demand from them to pay into a fund for affordable housing. And then lastly, I had introduced impact fees when I was on council. Over in Rutherford County, they have impact fees. But first we have to get permission from the state of Tennessee in order to get it done. So as we're building all these tall and skinny big businesses and things like that, let's get permission to put on impact fees. I know it gets passed along to the buyers, but listen, we got to take care of our brothers and sisters, and that is what I would do as mayor. Thank you.
All right. Jeff Yarbrough.
Thanks, and I've got a track record of actually making this the key priority when I took office. So this entire question about whether we're going to allocate money for this is because I actually passed the first legislation to allow Metro to allocate money to affordable housing. I literally wrote the statute that creates affordable housing and workforce housing as statutory terms in Tennessee, gave us tools to acquire property and numerous other things. So here's a few of the sources we need to use. Look, this year I proposed moving all of our Airbnb tax rental into affordable housing. That would create a spot of $12 million of dedicated funding. If we don't do that, we still get hotel taxes that we can use for the general fund. Those dollars can be dedicated to affordable housing, and we should do it. We should look at impact fees. Vivian's right. We are still fighting that fight. And we probably should look at what the real estate transfer tax as well. But we need stable sources of funding when it comes to affordable housing so that we can start thinking about more long-term investments.
That is time. Natisha Brooks.
And I have a track record, along with my special needs families, those that are disabled, to keep paying higher taxes that were raised in the middle of COVID during our most devastating time in not only our country, but our U.S. history. So we need to still continue to talk about our property taxes and where they're going. So one thing I want to do as mayor is have a complete audit of where that money went when we had a increase in our property taxes. And anybody that says that our taxes were not increased, I'd like a rebate, because something that I got in the mail says something differently. Another thing, when we have In-N-Out Burger come in and get a $1.4 million tax incentive to be here, what incentive was given to us, the people, the renters? That's something that we need to look to, and we need to look towards the state. As you send a mayor, send someone that has a relationship or could have a relationship with the state to get things done for you.
I have a rebuttal.
You want a rebuttal?
I do.
Vivian, you got it.
I just want to, my mother said never chase a lie, but I'm going to chase this one today. Let's make it clear. The tax increase that happened was in 2019, and that was right before the reappraisal. And I think it was really right before when the mayor recognized that the city didn't have enough money to pay its bills. But my point is that we are now as we sit last year, second lowest tax rate in Davidson County history, and now we're under the third lowest tax rate in Davidson County history. If anybody's going to go and reduce your value, they're saying to you, what my colleague just said, that they want to decrease your value.
That's time for the rebuttal. That's time for the rebuttal right there.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I have a rebuttal.
Natisha, you have a quick, very
rebuttal.
quick statement.
Our property taxes went up 34%, up to 34%. If there is something different, you can show it to me in person, in writing, and I can show you our tax bill.
All right. Matt Wilshire.
Back to the Barnes Fund. So some of you may know that I am a Nashville native. Grew up here. I literally went to church at Edge Hill United Methodist Church growing up. Bill Barnes was my pastor. I heard every Sunday, or almost every Sunday, about the importance of having housing that's not segregated by income. That is a motivating factor for not just my views on housing policy, but on education and safety. This city has been far too divided for far too long. And I literally changed jobs to move over to MDHA to advanced mixed income housing, because we are all better, all of us, when we live together, work together, don't go off into our silos and attack each other. We're better when we're in this together. And I commit to fund the Barnes Fund and other initiatives for affordable housing to make that happen.
That is time. Thank you very much, candidates. And Sharon, you want to have a rebuttal? You want to put your... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm tripping. Sorry, it's early. I didn't have enough coffee. Sharon.
So I have been working in the trenches for 25 years. And let me just tell you that I would, in terms of the question, I would draw revenues from some of the places that we have, like our 4% budget that we have over the judgment and losses that we have, and reallocate those funds. But let me just be clear. I saw in a note that I had in 2016 where Reverend Bond said that he did not want to fund unless it was going to the people who needed the most. So when I tell you that the former director of MDHA said there's a reason why the D comes before the H, because they were focused on development more than they were focused on housing. It has to be a priority for there to be housing for those people who have been forgotten, who have been lost, and those who have not been given the opportunity to have housing. As your mayor, I would make it your priority and my priority to make sure that those who do not have housing will have housing.
All right, that is time. Thank you very much. I don't know if any of you spent time in Southern California. I lived out there for a number of years. There's In-N-Out, and then there's Fat Burger. I have to say, Fat Burger is far superior than In-N-Out Burger in every way possible. Okay, next up, we've got, this is a 30-second, you all have 30 seconds to answer, and this is another funding question. Metro Housing and Development Agency is the largest provider of public housing in Nashville with nearly 6,700 units. However, we haven't made substantial additions to or renovations of our public stock in decades. Public housing is and will continue to be a crucial housing option for our most vulnerable residents. So what role do you feel public housing plays in addressing our housing crisis? Freddie O'Connell, we begin with you. 30 seconds.
So public housing is our very low-income affordable housing, and our failure to expand it means we have been functionally losing affordable housing stock as the city has been growing. One of the biggest criticisms I had of the Envision process was that we weren't adding net new units of very low-income affordable until very late in the process. So we need to continue that. Metro has a role to play. We need to find a partnership with MDHA. But years ago, when we started decriminalizing marijuana here at the local level, before the state fully preempted us, there is still a policy we can do at the MDHA level, which is stop the zero tolerance policy for people with simple possession of drugs.
That is time on that. Y'all like that one. Heidi Campbell.
So public housing is absolutely where we need to look. This is why the first thing I want to do is do a comprehensive assessment of our public lands and identify places where public housing would be viable. This includes actually using our public school lands as well to look at possible housing for RTI instructors, teachers, and counselors. Continuing to support co-ops for artist groups, IT groups, and people who have need for housing that are working in our city and are getting pushed out of our city.
That's time. Vivian Wilhoit.
As a person, one of 4 children who benefited from public housing in Gulfport, Mississippi, it is very, very critical. It helped my mother when she was a single mother, growing with 4 kids, and all of them she sent to college. And I'm so proud of her. So when we're talking about public housing, it is definitely necessary. We definitely need to increase the stock. We definitely need to stop putting affordable housing out in areas where they cannot have access to transportation, cannot have access to sidewalks, cannot have access to grocery stores, and placing them in food deserts. And those are things that I fought against.
That is time right there. Thank you very much. Jeffrey Albro.
We should follow the lead of cities like New Orleans, who have done a good job of making sure that we're lowering the barriers to entry, especially for reentry populations, and getting rid of the zero tolerance policy, because I think that is crazy. 2, we are not adding units at anywhere right near the rate we need to, and that does just diminish the role that public housing can and should be playing. And 3, while I think that Vision did a lot of great things, I was at a planning meeting for that thing 15 years ago, it seems like. Where are we envisioning everywhere else, and how do we get more of that going and going faster?
Thank you very much. Letitia Brooks.
Many of our minority groups, especially when I talk about education, we worry about the mobility rate. Students always being pushed around, moved around from school to school. We need to start thinking about that when we start talking about low-income housing. And also, when we say affordable housing, let's be very careful, because what is affordable to you may not be affordable to me. So as far as low-income housing, we need to make sure that we think about our children, the schools that they're in, so that if in time, because it seems like it's happening, they're being pushed out, that we're thinking about where they're going to get their education next.
Thank you very much. Matt Wilshire.
So, Khalil, as I'm sure you know, MDHA operates the HUD-funded public housing program. These are funds literally from the federal government. It is the federal government that has substantially diminished funding for public housing over the last 40 years. But we, in Nashville, took an innovative approach to actually have the financial capacity to be able to expand the number of public housing sites. We literally have done this. We are the only city in the country that is taking the innovative approach. That is a process I've been proud to be a part of and will continue as mayor.
That is time.
So, as I told you earlier, the focus on MDHA was development and not housing previously. So they really were not trying to make affordable housing for anyone. And the only housing that is going to be affordable is the government housing. I love the fact that the new director is focusing on legacy residents. He's focusing on giving people 50% of those houses that they have so-called affordable housing, market rate, as well as workforce, where they're 25% each. But I think it's absolutely necessary.
That is time. Thank you. Jim Gingrich.
Everybody should be able to live in dignity, and just having spent time recently with residents of Sudicum and 7 months ago with JC residents, the descriptions of appliances being broken, plumbing not being repaired, windows being broken or shot out, not getting repaired, we need to do better as a city. That has to change.
All right. All right, we're going to move on to a question about zoning. We go back to our 60-second answer format. Heidi Campbell will begin. We're going to talk, again, planning and zoning. So we understand that many plans exist to guide land use and development in Nashville. Residents who are unstably housed experience frequent moves or are directly or indirectly displaced because of new development wonder what these policies do to protect them from gentrification. They may follow development projects and zoning changes. Planners sit at the uncomfortable middle of often conflicting goals to increase property values and land use while also safeguarding residents' best interests. Planning and zoning policies can be barriers or facilitators to creating or preserving affordable housing. So what changes are needed to embed equity in planning and zoning? Heidi Campbell, you kick us off. You've got 60 seconds.
So I'm the only person up here who's been a mayor, and serving as a mayor, served on the planning commission and spent a lot of time with zoning. And I've also spent a lot of time with the planning department, and I know that there are permitting bottlenecks that are preventing developers from actually building affordable housing. We need to streamline our permitting process so that we're not incurring the opportunity costs that are preventing us from actually building housing in this city. I'll also say that I was the first person in this race to issue a plan, a full comprehensive plan about what I intend to do. It's on my website, and we have an update on Monday specifically targeted towards expanding our comments on affordable housing that will be coming out Monday. It's voteheidicampbell.com. I ask you to take a look both now and Monday when we release our new affordable housing plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, if I had a magic wand, I would make sure we have affordable housing in Bellmead. Because you know what? That's one of the problems with the city. It's not the people in those certain areas, it's the fact that we cannot seem to share spaces with each other. So planning needs to take a look at making those properties more creative, to have the mixed use that we're talking about. Those who need to have a racial, I think a relevation is sometimes people who live in places that don't want to be around people. And I'm not trying to say force it, but I'm saying we need to have the opportunity to have access to it. That's what we need to be doing, and that's what I would do in planning and zoning, to say, let's be conscious about it, and let's take a creative approach. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff Yarbrough.
So Vivian makes a good point, because it's the exclusionary zoning policies that are already on the books in cities like Oak Hill, and places in Williamson County that actually mangle the market to ensure that there's less affordable housing than there might otherwise be. That's not capitalism. That is a government intervention to make housing more expensive. Look, when you look at the zoning code in Nashville, it was enacted 25 years ago, and it is in dire need of updating. That does not mean that you make everything universal. It does not mean that you make everything, you have mid-rises as far as the eye can see. But our zoning code needs to be updated so that we have density where we have infrastructure and demand to support it. We have to have some greater capacity to get that middle level density across the city. And we need to start holding every part of town responsible for carrying their weight when it comes to affordable housing and trying to do their part to make sure that they're part of building a better future for the city.
Thank you very much. Letitia Brooks.
The one thing that I would do as mayor is to make sure that who's on the planning and zoning committee are people like you. There are so many areas around Davidson County, Inglewood, we've got Brentwood, Davidson side, we have the Antioch side, we have the Glencliff area, different areas that you need to be involved in the planning and zoning. And especially, we need to have members of the disabled, the special needs, the caretakers to be involved in our planning and zoning because we learn best from you, not you from us.
All right. Matt Wilshire.
So yeah, the zoning code was adopted in 1998 and needs to be updated. Nashville Next was adopted 8 years ago and needs to be updated. I imagine a group as engaged as this one has participated in some of the zoning battles over the last however many years, 50 years. The zoning is us. We are the zoning. We are the people who don't want that extra traffic getting in the way of my commute to work. It's us. We are doing it. It's not the government imposing it on us. It's us. And as your mayor, I will lead an overall process where it's not a particular project, but rather a statement of principles of us as a community. What's important to us? Where do we want to have density in housing? So that when it comes down to that in particular project that's going to kind of inconvenience you, you can say, no, we've made a statement as a community. This is a priority. It's got to be sequenced that way. And if we just end up having all these battles over and over again, we're going to end up in the same place that we have.
All right, that is time. Thank you. Sharon Hurt.
So they're talking about inclusionary housing because it's the design. They're trying to exclude people. Listen to what I'm saying. They do not want inclusionary housing. They do not want to be inclusive. What I would do as mayor is overhaul the planning department altogether. Yes, the process needs to be changed, and we would do that and make something a customer-centric, user-friendly process in order for us to be able to create more housing for the people who need it the most. I would not leave one forgotten body, one forgotten community, one forgotten block behind, because we've got to have someone in that office who cares about all people, all Nashvillians, and make sure that they have proper housing.
All right. Jim Gingrich.
So we do need to upgrade and update the zoning code because not only are we facing some of the issues that we've already talked about, but think about the retired teacher who somebody shows up at their home and says, I'll give you more money than you have ever thought possible in cash if you'll sell me your home. That person may not be educated enough or be knowledgeable enough to know that that property can be rezoned by the individual on the other side of the table and double it in value without putting any money into that. How unfair is that? We as a city not only need to rezone to be able to create the types of opportunities to modernize our city from a housing standpoint, but for the folks who are here, we have an unfair situation where they are not realizing the value of their own homes.
All right. Freddie O'Connell.
You're already monopolizing a mic.
Over the past 8 years, it's been pretty interesting because I've represented the part of the city that has welcomed more new neighbors than any other part of the city. We've had 11,000 people come to District 19, and generally we've done it with them being welcomed. And part of the reason for that is we've got a pretty flexible zoning code, but Nashville Next is almost 10 years old, and it has community plans for the entire city in it. And it's important because what we learned when we did the exercise in Nashville Next in the first place is we said we'd like our growth focused in centers and on the corridors connecting those centers. But it said less about character and cost. And right now, if you talk to an infill developer, they're gonna try to make 4X on the dirt that they buy. And they think of whatever they're buying as the dirt that they can develop on. So if you buy a piece of property for $250,000 that's just dirt, you're gonna try to get $1 million out of it. So that can be $1 million home, that could be two $500,000 homes. And we need to make sure that the zoning process is allowing infill development to occur in a way that isn't disruptive to
thank you very much. That
but
is
takes into
time.
account
I
character
would
and
like to
cost.
rebuttal.
All right, Sharon Hurt, you got your first rebuttal in the books.
So I think that, well, I know that district council members are rezoning for gentrification. North Nashville is being gentrified just like South Nashville was gentrified. You look at the district over there in District 1, Clarksville Highway going all the way back. You see that they're widening the roads. It is evident that they are coming in, taking over. Jefferson Street and that North Nashville community is the only historic district that we have had. The demographics of it 10 years ago was about 75% black, and
All right,
and now it's now
that is time.
51% black.
A quick comment, Freddie O'Connell.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that on that point, as we tried to stop the short-term rental incursion into Black North Nashville, Councilmember Hurt fought me on an amendment that would have protected black neighborhoods.
Okay.
That is
All
not
right,
true.
thank you all for your responses thus far. We're going to mix it up a little bit. Now we're going to get to some related trivia questions. Each of you, in your packets right there, you have a whiteboard and marker, and you have 20 seconds to write down your answer after I read each short question. We're really not trying to play a gotcha game here. You will write your answer down. I will read the correct answer. If you have answered correctly, please just raise your board up in the air. We don't expect everyone to know every answer, but we do want to know, we want you to know that there are people in this city and in this room today who are experts in these topics and look forward to working with the next administration. So with that, the first trivia question is, how many evictions were filed in Davidson County General Session Court in May 2023? Again, I'll ask it again. How many evictions were filed in Davidson County General Session Court in May 2023?
Can I phone a friend?
All right. Candidates, show us your answers. What we got? This thing rolls. 4,400, don't know, 500, more than 2,000, 3,000, too many, 1,250. Mr. Gingrich, I cannot see yours. That is 100. All right, the closest. The correct answer is 1,270 evictions. That was Councilmember Hurt. So according to Davidson County eviction filing data, the eviction lab, there were 1,270 evictions filed in Davidson County in the month of May alone, y'all. Preventing, stopping, and mitigating the effects of evictions will be critical for the next mayor in order to address our city's housing crisis. Okay, trivia question number 2. Here are 5 names I'm about to give you. Which one is not a public housing complex in Nashville? Vanderbilt Manor, J. Henry Hale Apartments, Andrew Jackson, Casey Place, J.C. Napier. Again, Vanderbilt Manor, J. Henry Hale Apartments, Andrew Jackson, Casey Place, J.C. Napier. You have 20 seconds, and you can imagine the Jeopardy music. Everybody seems ready. Okay. Show us your answers. What we got? Vanderbilt Manor. It looks like we're 100% across the board. Give it up for our smart candidates, y'all. That is true. Vanderbilt Manor is the correct answer. So next up, how many MNPS students experienced homelessness at some point during the 2022 to 2023 school year? Again, how many MNPS students experienced homelessness at some point during the 2022 to 2023 school year? Couple more seconds. All right, show us your answers. What do we got? 3,000, 395, 2,400. One is too many. 2,500 plus 640. The correct answer is 3,522 MNPS students. If you were a few hundred, we have a couple that were pretty close. The number came from the HERO program data that showed a 10% increase in the number of MNPS students who experienced homelessness from the previous year. That's a 10% increase in Nashville. Question number 4. At what temperature does Metro's emergency cold weather shelter open at for people experiencing homelessness? Again, at what temperature does Metro's emergency cold weather shelter open at for people experiencing homelessness? About 20 seconds. Are we ready to go? All right, hold up your answers, everyone.
We're doing Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit it is. The correct answer is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Metro opened up their cold weather shelter at 32 degrees Fahrenheit last winter for the first time ever. Prior to this, it was not opened unless the temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so we've got 3 more trivia questions. This one is the updated 2023 area median income, or AMI, for our metropolitan statistical area was recently announced. What is the current AMI for a family of 4 in Nashville in 2023? Again, what is the current AMI for a family of 4 in Nashville for 2023? We've got one answer. Gingrich is ready. O'Connell's ready. All right. This reminds me of when I was on The Price is Right back in 1998. I was. The correct answer is $102,000 a year. Keep your board up. If you were in 20 grand, keep your board up. All right. Yeah. Here's this particular note. This number is updated each year by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. This was the first time our AMI has surpassed $100,000. The first time it has surpassed that. It's missing a 0. I mean, that's a problem if it's my paycheck, but we can understand that. All right. How many emergency housing vouchers through the Section 8 program do we set aside each month for people experiencing homelessness in Nashville? Again, how many emergency housing vouchers through the Section 8 program do we set aside each month for people experiencing homelessness in Nashville? Matt Wilshire's on top of it. All right, everybody ready? Hold your answers up. We got Freddie O'Connell's working on his. All right, time is up. The answer, hold on, let me get some of these. Let me look at some of these. All right, Matt Wilshire is exactly on the nose. The answer is 18 vouchers. Heidi was close.
If I didn't know, you should be angry with me.
Heidi was close. So we set aside 18 of these vouchers each month for people experiencing homelessness. But on any given night, get this, there are at least 2,000 people experiencing homelessness. To put that number in perspective, it's a big gap between 18 and 2,000. All right. So let's move on to our final trivia question. What percentage of people are renters in Nashville? What percentage of people are renters in Nashville? All right, please raise your answers. We've got 50, we've got 62, 41, 43, 46, 60, 46, and 55. The correct answer is 47%. Nearly half of all folks in our city rent. That's incredibly important to remember, trying to address our housing crisis. All right, that is the end of our trivia. Give all the candidates a round of applause. We don't have any parting gifts, but potentially one of you may become mayor. So there you go. Okay. Question number 4, tenant protections, which is something I'm interested about, a conversation I had with my landlord a couple months ago. Tennessee landlord-tenant laws have long favored the property owner. Substandard housing conditions, evictions, and discrimination are pervasive in our housing market. In other places, including cities in red states like Tennessee, local policies exist like a source of income protection or the ability to hold rent money in escrow while awaiting necessary repairs. Some cities have dedicated resources to establish agencies like the Office of the Tenant Advocate or even a tenant bill of rights to outline some of the basic dignities people can expect in their housing. So what is one specific way that your administration would strengthen and uphold the rights of tenants? We're going to start with you, Vivian Wilhoit.
So this is a very good question. How do we protect people who seem to be the voiceless? I do believe that we should increase our number of codes representative to ensure that slumlords are identified and that we find them appropriately. I talked with a lady just last week, and they were talking about the fact the number of roaches in the place, and we have not held them accountable. Someone has to get over that, and I've reported them. So guess what? We're coming. Then the other thing I do believe to do is that we need to work with Rachel Bell, Judge Rachel Bell, and in her diversion program of legacy that helps to protect those who are evicted or going to be evicted, to help them with the resources that they need. And then thirdly, we can support Middle Tennessee Legal Aid Society because they also have the Bill of Rights that they employ and enforce, and we need to work with them, and that's the public-private partnership that we can use because they're already doing the work on the ground. So those are 3 right there that my administration would employ. Thank you.
All right. Jeff Yarbrough.
Thanks. So I do think, one, this is a place where the mayor needs to exercise leadership in a public way. Because, look, we're not going to have the best statewide laws and policies. I know those people. They're not going to do it. But we do need to hold people accountable. When I responded to one of these in my district where Mosaic Apartments was literally keeping people in almost third world conditions. And it was, I mean, there was mold, and they were really jacking people off in terms of rents and really screwing things up. But we need to respond to things like that and hold people accountable publicly, and also try to figure out how we're doing it in the legal system as well. We should have far greater access to legal representation when it comes to our general sessions civil court. That's something that we should partner with the Bar Association to ensure that there is pro bono representation. And third, we should have a better education program where we're figuring out who owns apartments, who are our landlords,
right there.
And where's the education.
Time. Thank you very much. Letitia Brooks.
I like the answer of public display. Just like they grade restaurants, you get a restaurant score. You know which restaurants are in the 70s. You know which restaurants have 100s. We need to start doing that with landlords. Start scoring landlords on how they keep their housing. The other thing that we need to do is, just like the senator said here, my son is an attorney, TBA, I think you have to have so many hours volunteer service. The office, as your mayor, I would get with attorneys for them to dedicate their time that they're supposed to do anyway to help you with your legal representation when it comes to landlords that are not keeping up their property.
All right, thank you. Matt Wilshire.
So, as some of you may know, my father, Ashley Wiltshire, led the Legal Aid Society for 30 years. I grew up sitting around the kitchen table talking with my parents about the importance of making sure that those who were at the least end of the socioeconomic spectrum still had the best representation in the courts. We all deserve to have that. So one solution that I will work on is to work with Darkenya Waller and the great team that are already doing exceptional work involving attorneys from the Bar Association to provide additional pro bono services for individuals who are facing eviction. Because the best way to keep people in housing is to keep them from getting evicted in the first place. In addition to that, we will work with the financial empowerment centers, which I helped bring to Nashville when I was in the mayor's office through funding from Bloomberg and partnership with United Way, so that folks who are at risk of being evicted because of medical debt, because of other increases in costs, have an opportunity to improve their financial situation before they faced eviction in the first place.
Sharon Hurt.
As mayor, I would create an Office of Accountability, Efficiency, and Empowerment and make sure that the Fair Housing Act as well as landlord and tenant laws are followed. But I think that assessor property, Will Hoard is exactly right. We've got to make sure that codes go in and inspect on a regular basis. And I also love the work that the Legal Aid Society is doing, and we need to continue to support them and keep that going. But we've got to hold people accountable because they are preying on the vulnerable populations, and we need to not ignore it, but make sure that they leave no one behind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jim Gingrich.
So I'm going to echo what a number of my colleagues have said. You might have noticed it's been warm lately, and I just had coffee with a Vietnam vet who told me that the apartment building he's in had been without power for 11 days. And it was not an NES issue. It was an issue with that building, which he reported on day one. But nobody from the city came out to deal with it. So when I said we need to get our city government to be more effective and more efficient, this is a very good example. Thank you.
All right. Freddie O'Connell.
2020 was one of the hardest years any of us have lived through, but it was especially hard to govern through in parts of the city. We had a devastating tornado tear through a lot of the council district that I represent in the early part of the year, and then we had a bombing, one of whose lesser known characteristics was that it took 400 people out of their homes into 17-degree weather on Christmas Day. And what we learned through this is these are mass displacement events. And if you look around the city, you see that they're not that uncommon, whether it's apartment fires or flooding. What I learned was we don't have a great way to help people that have been displaced in one of those scenarios, especially if you're a renter. We should. That's one of the things I want to do is displacement navigation and coordination. There's also the disaster outreach piece after the tornado. Some of you will know that Gideon's Army and other organizations, Equity Alliance, worked on a project called Don't Sell Out North. It's important for Metro to be in that game. If predatory buyers are in the market after a disaster trying to tell people about liens that aren't real and other things that may cause them to force their sale of their home, Metro should be there first, helping people understand their property rights as renters.
Thank you very much.
I wanted rebuttal.
And you want to rebuttal? It's your second rebuttal.
That's fine.
Got it.
So considering that North Nashville District 19 is the most gentrified, and you have been the most gentrified overseer, please tell me how what you just said is true.
That people were displaced from their apartments?
That's a fact. That you focus on non-displacement.
I didn't cause the tornado or the bombing. Most of the places we've done have not been displacement. We built on vacant lots. We have built where rezoning activity.
The gentrification came long before the tornado.
All right. We're going to move on. Heidi Campbell, wrap us up.
So I see the Office of the Mayor as a venture catalyst, not a venture capitalist, but a venture catalyst to connect opportunity with need. And I support the groups that are already doing this work. We need to support tenant advocacy and a tenant bill of rights, of course, but groups like Workers' Dignity that are doing collective bargaining agreements are making a huge difference. I think we also need to support the Right to Counsel program to make sure that tenants that are facing eviction have the support that they need in the legal system. Nashville's Conflict Resolution Center, Metro Action Commission, Rooftop Nashville, all of these organizations are doing great work. It's not my job to mansplain to people how this needs to happen. It's my job to advocate for the people who are already doing the hard work.
All right, thank you very much. Here's a question. How many people in the audience, raise your hand if you think the rent is too damn high? All right, so question for you candidates. Raise your hand if you have a plan right now that anybody can go out and look online and discover the actual written plan you have to how to attack that once you become mayor. We've got 2, 3, 4, all right. Okay, I was just curious about that. Okay, let's move on to eviction, question number 5. And candidate is going to answer first. We're going to start off with you, Jeff Yarbrough. So Davidson County eviction filings are higher than they were before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we saw some of the most significant policies of recent memory put in place to protect renters from eviction. The federal eviction moratorium for people who fell behind on rent, a funding source that provided rental assistance, diversionary support services through the legacy court, and an increased moral consciousness that eviction is wrong, harmful, and dangerous. Though these and other initiatives did not stop all evictions, they showed us that policies can help protect renters from losing their homes and risking homelessness. So if you are elected mayor, what would you do to stop evictions? Jeff Yarbrough.
Thanks, and I think preventing evictions and preventing people from experiencing homelessness in the first place is a mission-critical job for the next mayor. As an attorney in private practice, some of the work that I actually did personally was recruit other attorneys and personally go and defend private landlord eviction cases to ensure that it didn't take money to do that, but to make sure that they had the best counsel possible. Because a lot of times people are evicted without good cause, without having a fair shake in the system, and we should make sure that that doesn't happen. 2, I think we need to do a better job of the city partnering with a lot of our nonprofits who are focused on trying to keep people in that temporary rental assistance, the Rooftops of the world, those other organizations, so that we're trying to keep people in homes. 3rd, and this might sound a little weird, but I want to work with landlords. I want to proactively start communicating with landlords and telling them where the dangers on eviction are, trying to figure out how we actually connect their tenants to resources.
Thank you very much. Natisha Brooks.
One of the things that we have rarely talked about in these forums is the mentally ill. Mental health matters. A lot of people aren't able to pay the rent because after the pandemic, they are depressed. And unless you've gone into depression, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So I want to be proactive on wanting to know why people are evicted. And this is why I have said, ladies and gentlemen, out of all of the races, the most important races are the judge races. You have to pay attention of who you are electing for judges. Mental illness, mental health is at the top of our policies to make sure that we have mental health clinics. And as far as evictions, let's be proactive in understanding why they are behind on their rent. And I will tell you, one of the #1 issues is depression, mental illness.
All right, thank you for that. Matt Wilshire.
There is a fundamental power imbalance between a large corporation that owns hundreds or thousands of units of housing and an individual who is facing an eviction for the first time, or even the second or third time. There's an expertise imbalance. There is a power imbalance. And as a society, we ought to work to level the power imbalance. That is the work that the Legal Aid Society does and that others do and that we ought to strive for. It is important that in the legal system, there is a balance. And so what we need to do is to tilt the scales of justice so they aren't quite so unbalanced but actually are even between those who are facing a financial crisis, because when someone is evicted, it is destabilizing for their entire family. And so again, it's important to work with the financial empowerment centers and other resources, Metro schools, to make sure that parents and families have the financial know-how and resources and are connected to solutions to stay in their homes before they are kicked out.
We're going to move on to Sharon Hurd.
There are three things that I would do. I would bring back, as mayor, I would bring back the housing court that we had to make sure that we represent those vulnerable populations who are being unjustly represented and evicted. I would also work with those landlords who are providing some affordable housing, because we have some small landlords who would, have some duplexes that's really trying to help people, give them tax relief and tax incentives. Then I work with Metro Action and Metro Social Services, because they've been doing a great job in providing help for those who need it the most. And it's really kind of funny, because Metro Social Services and Metro Action serves Black and brown communities the most, and they have the worst building that they're in. So that shows you how our government and our leadership respects the Black and brown communities.
All right, thank you for that. Jim Gingrich.
So there are a couple things that we should be doing, and I'm going to echo some of what's already been said, but I think it's pretty easy and pretty obvious. Everybody should have a right to counsel if you are facing this situation, because that needs to come, whether or not that can be provided through the nonprofit sector, legal aid society, but if it can't, it needs to come from the city, and it needs to be funded. An eviction is something that people carry around with them. It makes it harder to get into the next, accepted in the next apartment building. This is something that we should be working to avoid at all costs. We can also provide financial assistance. And lastly, we do need to be better at connecting people with the nonprofit assistance that is available. Thank you.
So the good news is that we had two independent efforts to try to provide right to counsel. While I was working with legal aid to try to structure this into Metro's budget, my council member colleague Zulfat Sawara worked on a right to counsel program using American Rescue Plan Act dollars. This is important. I want to shout out Melissa Cherry, though, because she has identified for me so many ways in which right to counsel alone is not enough. She's been to a number of eviction proceedings herself. She's sitting right here in the audience. There is a lot to learn from this. One of the things is that transparency matters. I want to make sure we work with our courts to see if we can get video proceedings there so people can see this process. Second, it is true that MDHA, unfortunately, as a major landlord, is one of our biggest evictors. We should be working with them to have an eviction review process that's coordinated with our housing division, because we ought to be setting the standard with our public housing authority and as a metro government so that we are not kicking people out of homes for whom that is the housing of last resort.
All right. Heidi Campbell.
Thank you. So, this is a situation where, sorry. Can you ask me the question again?
Okay. The question is, if you're elected mayor, what would you do to stop evictions?
Okay, so as a state senator, I actually worked to make sure that people knew in the city of Nashville about the rental assistance that was coming from the federal government, because we weren't telling people about that. We need to make sure that people are aware of opportunities that are available. I have also already met with the governor to ask him for support for Nashville General Hospital. And the reason that I've done that is because anybody in Nashville, or a lot of people in Nashville, are just one paycheck away from being unhoused. And a lot of that is about health, and a lot of that is about mental health, and we are about to lose our public hospital. And so I support, unlike some other candidates here, a new Nashville General Hospital.
Right now, that's our time. Thank you very much. Vivian.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, listen, when it comes to evictions, I hope this doesn't make anybody upset, but it's true. You have two people that are involved. You have the person that's being evicted, and you have the property owner. The property owner necessarily doesn't have a whole lot of rental properties. We don't know what situation. It could be somebody who owns one piece of property. So both of them need representation, but more so the heart for someone you're about to put out the street. So I do believe that we need to continue, as you mentioned about the legacy program and diversion program of Rachel Bell, the legacy program. That's so very important that we support that program. I also believe that we should continue, as I stated before, work with Legal Aid Society to make sure people are not evicted, to make sure that they have the opportunity that to understand why they're being evicted and give the opportunity for them to be able to stay in their home. And then last but not least, we have to be able to pay our Metro employees competitively. I mean, we never know when one of them are just one paycheck away from being evicted. We had a Metro employee person that wanted to not, wanted to be a homeowner,
Really
and we were able to help
that
her.
is
So
time.
that's what
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to this next question. It says easy. It's a yes or no answer. Guys, one question. Ask each person a question about eviction, and it's going to be yes or no. So yes or no, will you commit to continuing funding of the Right to Counsel initiative that provides a free attorney to some people experiencing eviction, which is scheduled to end in June of 2024? Again, will you commit to continuing funding of the Right to Counsel initiative that provides a free attorney to some people experiencing eviction, which is scheduled to end in June of 2024? Natisha Brooks, we'll start with you. Yes or no?
Yes.
Matt Wilshire.
Yes.
Sharon Hurd.
Yes.
Jim Gingrich.
Yes.
Freddie O'Connell.
Yes.
Heidi Campbell.
Yes.
Vivian.
Absolutely yes.
And Jeff.
Yes.
Okay. That was easy. Okay, so this is the final question, but after this, we're going to have some time for audience questions and answers, so start cooking those up in your heads right now. I'm sure you've come prepared with them if social media is any indicator. Next is criminalization. We have 60 seconds to go with that, and we're going to start with you, Matt Wilshire, first. This is our last question of the night, so we're going to make it a doozy. It's about the criminalization of homelessness. As of July 1st, 2022, it is a Class E felony to camp on public or state property anywhere in Tennessee. In Nashville, our shelter beds are either full or don't exist for families, couples, folks with disabilities, folks with pets. The list goes on. Over the last year, our Metro Homeless Impact Division has implemented an outdoor homelessness strategy that results in closing, fencing off, and policing of public land. Your administration will have to continue to balance competing property owner rights, and the rights of people to exist without being criminalized in a city that lacks sufficient affordable housing and low-barrier shelter beds. That is the reality. The reality is that in Nashville, and people have to exist outside while they experience homelessness and are working towards permanent housing. So, when an encampment is closed by law enforcement and folks are unable to seek shelter, as mayor, where would your administration tell displaced encampment residents to go while keeping in mind this reality that we do not have enough housing or shelter beds? 60 seconds, Matt Wilshire.
The state has made a felony out of its own failure. The state, the federal government, and our local government have failed to care for the people who are at most at risk in our society. And they have made it a felony to be a victim of that failure. It is wrong. It is absolutely wrong, just as the third grade retention law is wrong. It's saying, hey, we're going to set these standards, but we're not going to give you the resources to meet them. That is asinine public policy. So, to answer your question directly, when I was in the mayor's office, we put into the budget capital spending plan that was approved by a couple of council members here, the first investment in permanent supportive housing. When I was at MDHA, we opened Curb Victory Hall for veterans who are experiencing homelessness. So the answer is we need to build and add additional permanent supportive housing with wraparound services so that the folks who are the victims of the failures of the state have some opportunity to get back on their feet.
All right, that is time. And
we'll add more places for them to go.
Let me ask this, with all due respect to you and the rest of the candidates, building something new ain't gonna take care of people in November and December. Where are you gonna tell them to go now? Where can people go now? I mean, earlier in the night, earlier in this proceedings, we talked about the cold temperature, but we just had the hottest month in record on the planet.
Yeah.
It's Nashville and it's hot. Where are people supposed to go? We don't want people to freeze to death. We also don't want people to suffer heat stroke to death. Where
100%.
can people go right now?
Yeah. I mean, look, this is the fundamental issue. This funding for the permanent supportive housing was put in the 2018 capital spending plan, but it's taken 4 years to break ground on it. As mayor, this process will move much more quickly.
So would you expedite the funding to get the project up?
But today, with public-private partnerships, we can transform, there are, and we've already done this a little bit in North Nashville, old legacy long-term care centers into permanent supportive housing. It's not going to be ready overnight, but Derek Morgan and others have helped to transform one just off Clarksville Highway. There need to be many more of those investments.
I understand the thank you. We have to move on. I'm just wondering if that can get a priority the same way the Titan Stadium did.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to move on. Again, I'm not coming at you. Everybody's got to answer these questions. This is Nashville, after all. Okay, so Sharon Hurt.
I will do what I do as CEO of Streetworks, and that is put people in temporary housing, whether it's hotels, whether it's a rooming house or whatever. We make sure that we provide people with temporary housing until we can identify permanent housing for them. I would have a robust program to make sure that we get that done, because no person deserves to be unhoused. And we do need to find them help if they have some substance use disorders, whether it is mental health, all of those things we need to address and ensure that we provide the housing for them. I would work with nonprofits, churches, and other organizations to ensure that we are all working together and taking care of those that need it the most.
All right, thank you very much. Gingrich.
So what is criminal is that our city has done so little to build permanent housing. The cities that have attacked this challenge of the unhoused well have built significant amounts of permanent housing, because ultimately, as you point out with that question, folks need a place to go. Now, what's interesting is that in most cases, the large majority, again, of that housing is provided by the private sector. You know, you can still buy an old motel here in town and refurbish that room for 75 to 100 grand for a room, and you can make the economics work. We just get in people's way when they want to do that. I had lunch the other day with somebody who has 3 projects he'd like to move forward with, but the city is in his way. That has to change. And the idea that we are going to arrest somebody when we don't have a place to put them is also criminal. That has to change.
I understand that, but let me ask you this, Mr. Gingrich. I understand how the private sector is trying to come in and help some of these issues and everything, but what is government's responsibility to demand on any new big company that decides to come into our town that they allocate funds to support the town, not just for the salaries of people that they're bringing in, not just give people who qualify for their jobs here, because there's a bunch of people we can go. This is not an education forum, and that's a whole nother issue. What would you do as mayor to force new companies to come up with funds to help with providing housing?
I think that forcing is going to be a tough road, and it depends on the company. You know, I look at Alliance Bernstein. Alliance Bernstein has donated millions of dollars. Okay, Amazon has also provided funding, as Matt will tell you, for housing. But the issue is that ultimately we have to encourage those who are experts at providing housing to provide housing. I mean, look, the soccer deal, there is mixed housing that came as part of that deal. Okay? Maybe all these folks can go, maybe the Titans will go let everybody live in the new stadium that we built for them.
Potentially. All right. We'll see. Okay. Freddie O'Connell.
So I think I was actually uninvited from the Homelessness Planning Council in large part because of my objection to this outdoor homelessness plan. Because this is the wrong approach. I don't believe, like the state of Tennessee apparently does, that lacking housing is a crime. For me, I wouldn't want to tell someone where to go so much as I would tell them that it's not going to be my chief job to make sure that no one sees you. My chief job is going to be to make sure we revisit this plan, that we get it right for people that have a place to go, but that we not stop there, because the issue with encampments is we can't settle for that. We can't just say that's good enough. Even if they're on public land where we're not criminalizing them, that's still not giving them housing and services, and that's why at least the things we've gotten done are, thanks to legislation I led, we've got a standalone Office of Homeless Services now. It is funded. To Mayor Cooper's credit, we have $50 million to start now, and we need to advance that. But I don't think where we are as Metro with this outdoor homelessness camp is good.
All right, but let me ask you this, Mr. O'Connell. I think everybody here understand, and put me on the record for this, that our state house is crazy. I think we all understand that. I don't necessarily know if they represent, I'm not going to say that they don't represent what some Nashvillians may want, but I don't necessarily think that they represent what is good for Nashvillians or the state of Tennessee in general. So we can all talk about where the state is off in our philosophies or within our ethics. But again, as I asked Mr. Wilshire, people are hot and people are cold. Where can they go?
So during the day, and this is a great point because we're in one of the best facilities in Nashville. One of the things I want to say about Nashville Public Library is they have embraced an incredible social services mission. There are people in this building on staff who know that, I'm not saying you can live in a library, but when it's hot outside, this is one of the best examples of something that is more than just a place to check out a book. That is the outlook that Metro should have more comprehensively, and we could allow for people to be in places like this 24/7, 365 if we found the will to do it. You can't sleep here today, but there is a way that you could make this place. We've done it at the farmers market. We have done it in multiple locations around the city where we have found ways to accommodate people in extreme weather. This is why there was an extreme weather committee of the Homelessness Planning Council, and it is not just for cold, it's not just for overnight, it's for warm when people are going through heat stroke and other things that are just a part of severe weather.
Right.
And our local outlook does matter tremendously in terms of how we take care of people.
All right, thank you very much. Heidi Campbell.
This is a question that just speaks to our value system as a culture. It tells you what our values are. And the fact that, that we have a burgeoning homeless population tells you that our values are out of whack. I stood on the Senate floor and I fought with every ounce of my being against felonizing homelessness. That is insane. That is indefensible. And the fact that we did it is appalling. As I said, we have to look at how we're taking care of people in general, and I think that starts with having a public hospital that works. And Nashville General has a new plan to build a public hospital. I'm the only candidate up here that is supporting that, but we have to take care of people first and foremost so that they can get to housing. It's a Maslowian thing. If we don't have the fundamental needs that we have to survive, then we can't look at housing options. And when we're talking about housing options, let's be clear, we're talking about a range.
That is time. You're talking about a range of housing options. Real quick, I'm gonna give you a little bit of time. Give me 5.
A range of 5 housing options?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're talking about, we've been all over the place here talking about people who are unhoused all the way to people who can't afford to buy their starter home. And in the middle there, you know, people who are unable to pay rent. So we have different, you know, approaches that we need to take to all of these things. But first and foremost, we need to make sure that we don't have people who are unhoused. And to answer the question, what would we do immediately? We need to identify public parcels that can be used immediately for emergency housing.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Vivian Wilhoit.
And Senator Campbell's exactly right. This is sad. We've used the fairgrounds for, you know, temporary housing. We've used unused spaces, and I think we should use those that are owned by Metro government as temporary housing. But you know what's so sad about it? A lot of the temporary, the empty buildings are in neighborhoods that are maybe low income or middle income folks who don't want it either. So what do we do about that? Now, this is temporary housing. We're talking about where you want to place them. Many of you may be living right here. I don't know. If any of you are in Belmead or some of the high-end areas of Nashville, but none of these empty buildings are there. So they're not going there, okay? And there are people who are saying, you're always dumping on us. We have to be intentional about what we do. If it's going to be temporary housing, make it temporary. Make sure you provide the resources to those neighborhoods where you're going to send all the folks who need to be housed temporarily.
That is time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jeff Yarbrough.
In the longer run, we do need a supply of both permanent supportive housing and temporary supportive housing so that we are really in a place to deal with this. In the shorter term, I do think we need to do a better job of utilizing public spaces, public land, and probably some micro housing, to be honest, to ensure that you create some spaces where we know that we can get housing fast. Also, one of the upsides of that is we're able to move people in groups so that they're able to retain the support networks that they have developed in camps. Because part of this is we got to start treating people like they're people. Everybody, these people, everybody is our neighbor here, right? And what's offensive about both this criminalization, which I stood and fought against, and what's offensive about just sort of the language that happens around this place, when we start talking about reclaiming our public spaces, everybody's a member of the public. They have rights to that public land.
All right.
And we need to respect that and build our homeless policy around that.
That is time. Thank you very much, Mr. Yarbrough. Letitia Brooks.
I know this firsthand. What's criminalization of the homelessness is one, application fees to try to get an apartment. The application fees that are non-refundable, $150 here, $200 here, $50 here, you can't get the money back. I would like the state legislatures to do something in the next session about that. We need to get our money back. People need to get their money back if you're not going to be able to get an apartment. The next thing that we need to talk about is post-pandemic. I've tried to work with the legislature, the congressmen. I didn't gerrymander the lines, but we have 3 congressmen that that represent Davidson County that don't live in Davidson County, and that's a problem. But I have asked them to do a temporary stay on credit scores. A lot of people's credit scores went in the toilet because they couldn't get a job during the pandemic or could not work, which led to mental health and mental illness. So you ask where we want them to stay. I've always collected nonprofit cards. So if you have a nonprofit, give me your card, because I'm going to be calling you.
That's time. But I do want to ask you, while I commend everything you said, where are they going to go?
Okay, so I'm a member of the YMCA, and I've already asked some people on the board of the YMCA, because there's showers there. When you start talking about where you're going to house them, they're going to have to take a shower. So I'm looking at YMCA's, gyms that could possibly do emergency housing.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, now it's time for your questions, audience questions to address to the candidates. We have about 10 to 15 minutes, I think, for this. We won't have a strict cutoff for candidates, but I do want to let y'all know we have so many rebuttal slots open. I don't know if you guys use your rebuttals efficiently, but that's for each of you to decide. So we're going to answer your questions as soon as we can until 3:50 so we can wrap it up with quick closing statements. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. India and Ashley will come around to you with the microphone. Now, only ask one question and direct it to one candidate specifically, all right? One question to one candidate specifically, and we're going for it. All right, who's first up? It's on.
It's on?
It's on.
All right. Self-select in this row. Who should?
What do I want to do as a group? All right. So, hi. I'm Darren. It's nice to see y'all in this shiny place. So, what I got here is a row of folks that are Madisonites that have been recently, if it's okay to be, experiencing the situations that we're going through. My nonprofit, The Beat, serves only Madison. We have a 300 to 500 nomadic population that stays in Madison. And what I don't understand about the transitional housing program is if somebody has lived in Madison for 20 years, was raised in Madison by poor economic policies, I can't direct it to any one of you in particular, but I can say is If you want your neighborhood, you should be able to keep your neighborhood. How come there's only 15 transitional beds in Madison for a 300 to 500 population while developers are raiding through? And that's all I wanted to say, and I look forward to working with one of you. Enjoy.
Who do you want to answer that question?
Freddie. Because I asked Freddie last week if he'd build me our own shelter in Madison.
Yeah, I mean, the reason for that is primarily so far funding. We've both been out to City Road. We've seen the mobile housing crisis navigation center model work around the city, but the issue right now has been we haven't funded more transitional spots than that. But again, as I mentioned the other day, I'm happy to look at options for a Madison area shelter.
Can I just ask what the name of that was again? The what? The
Beat.
Beat. All right. You got some more questions,
We're
Zach?
going to alternate sides of the room.
All right. We're coming up to question number 2 from the audience.
Okay.
It's hard for me because I got a bunch of questions. It's a lot of misspoken words. So I'm going to change everything. I'm glad to see you know how to use the word low income, because usually when you think of low income, they think of black or brown people. So that's systemic racism there. I want to know which one, and it has to be for all of y'all, which one of y'all actually know that when you work for MDHA and you become mayor, you're not their boss. So which one of y'all would help me sue the hell out of MDHA so we can have housing?
There you go. I think you can raise your hands on that one. Anybody down to get into to become extra litigious?
I want to ask the question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, when you ask, well, I think it's unfortunate that you feel like you have to sue MDHA in order to get your rights to be recognized. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a conflict.
Yeah.
I'm from Nashville.
Yeah.
I'm a mayor, former mayor of homeless, never wanted to be in that. I could never sit where you're sitting because I can't be bought and paid for.
Well, I know you, and I think you know my family. And well, I'm just speaking of my family, but I'm trying to answer your question. I'm just saying.
All y'all, I want to know when you help me sue them, because they're not doing it's about the production of the city and not the production of people. Economic advance is not the same as human progress. So while you sit here, you can go up on the 3rd floor. That's where we're going to be when it's cold, when it's hot. And they pulled up the seats out here on Church Street. I don't want to hear from home. Tell me something in the last 15 to 20 years that the Democrats have done productively to say, a family can say, well, I can do this. They help me. It's no help. It's no help. I mean, the production, MDHA is going to build a $3.1 million stadium, but they can't put housing.
I feel.
This is the best, I'm going to give you this, form that I've seen. You know why it's the best? Because the media is scared to be here. 5, 4, 2, 7 people out here. And this is serious.
Well, I think this is the best form because we're having some real questions without sounding like as if we're cookie cutters and going straight to it. So my thing is that, when you say you want to sue MDHA, and I'm assuming from what you just said, it's the things that they have not done as far as providing you the resources that you need. I got you there. Am I correct on that? Because I don't know why you want to sue them. What I want to say is that I would love to talk with you to find out, because I don't know what is the reason why you want to sue, but it's obviously strong enough that you're here today to talk about it. So I'm just saying I would love to sit with you, talk with you, and do what we can in order to work together to make sure that what is being missed, what is not being done, which I totally agree, which is not being done, be done. Because one of the things about being mayor, you have to be intentional, but you also have to be courageous.
And the most important thing about being mayor is that you're mayor for everybody, not just the people who voted for you.
That's exactly right.
So,
Exactly.
anyone else care to answer that question?
Yes. Right. So Howard, I don't know if I will help you sue MDHA, but I will help it get better. Because you are absolutely right. People are dying every day. You know that I run a syringe services program, and the things that is happening here, and people are looking a blind eye to all of them. And what I will do is stand with you as I have for the past 25 years and make sure that we change, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And we're going to have to stand together, and I can promise you I will do that, stand with you, John Zerka, and all the rest of them over here at McKinsey, whatever it is that it takes for us to do it. I want to give you a shout out for your interview on Scripps. I thought it was great, and you represented the city well. But we're going to have to make a change, and we're going to have to be radical about the things that we do. And you can bet that I have the courage.
Thank you. Anybody else? And thank you very much. Anyone else? Jim Gingrich, then Heidi, Matt. You want to get in on this? Okay, he wants to hear from that, so we'll go Jim, Heidi, and then we'll finish up with Matt.
Look, I said earlier, MDHA. I had a friend of mine who said, Jim, there's a 4-letter word about injustice in this city, and it's spelled MDHA. Before the Christmas holidays, I was with a group, we're handing out food to folks, a lady didn't take a turkey, and she starts telling us a story about her stove being broke for 13 months, despite putting in work orders. And so she didn't take a turkey. Her family didn't have a turkey dinner. You know, another woman's telling me a story about, again, her pipes being broken in her bathroom. Her kids aren't taking a bath. They've been broke for a month, and they don't want to go to school. This has to change. The city should not be the worst landlord in the city.
Heidi.
So one thing I want to point out is there's a lot of grift, and I have identified on the Fiscal Review Committee a lot of grift in our state, but also in our city government. And so the Horn contract that we signed recently for rental assistance, for example, none of that money was getting to Nashvillians, to the point where we actually gave a bunch of money back to the federal government. And I know that we should not have been giving money back to the federal government. So I have already written letters to ask for an investigation to be launched into that. I agree with you that it's a huge problem. We have big problems with the way that our agencies are handling money in this city and in this state. And we need to address that, and we need to address it yesterday.
All right. Matt.
So I will continue to work with you and talk with you as I have, but I hope to not have to sue MDHA, but work to make the organization better.
Okay. We're going to open it up. Thank you very much, my man. We're going to open it up to more questions from the audience. We got some people over there, Ash. This gentleman's been standing patiently for a while. Let's get to this gentleman right over here.
Lecture here.
We totally will. I mean, I saw him standing. We're going to get to as many people as we can.
This is a question for Freddie O'Connell. It's a question for Freddie O'Connell. I'm the lead organizer for North Nashville Community Economic Development Consortium. I've been allied with them, Sharon, and the other executive directors for the last 7 years. In that time, my father is a member of 15th Avenue Baptist, where you entered the other day. We have been trying to meet with you for months. North Nashville Community Economic Development Consortium has been trying to meet with you for years. And you rezoned the area for several parcels of land, some of which 15th Avenue had sold to a developer who sold to a developer, and that developer was actually running to replace you on the council, Derek Lyle. So my question is, and I asked this question before, which was never answered face to face, why did you choose that developer? Because they didn't put a single unit of affordable housing in any of their units, any of them. And then you have 4 of the 5 agencies I work for work in affordable housing. You never came to us.
So I don't choose developers?
You could choose developers. I remember I asked that question, and you knew you could have chose a different developer if you wanted to.
I don't choose developers.
You could have chosen
I don't
a different
rezone
developer.
land. I don't go to the planning commission and ask for rezoning requests. As a district council member, that's not how it works. So we can have a conversation, and I will say, I don't know who has been reaching out or where, but I've been to 15th Avenue multiple times. We've worked with CDCs throughout North Nashville, and I'm happy to meet with you all again.
I know for a fact you're lying right now.
Okay. We have totally different outlooks on this, and we can figure it out offline.
You haven't met with them. They asked me to
I'm
ask
happy
the
to show
question,
you
by
the
the way.
emails after the forum.
They asked me to ask the question.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna get to that. We got a couple questions over here. We're gonna get to it now. Candidates, are you all okay with about maybe 3 to 4 more questions from the audience? We're doing pretty good on time.
300 to 400 more questions. That's
Oh,
what
look
we
at
do.
this. Okay.
Hi, I have a question for the council lady right there that I know. I've been off these streets for 4 days straight, and I hate seeing these people on the streets. And it hurts me. It hurts me so bad that I keep praying for these people on these streets. And I don't like how these people die. It hurts me. And I've been loaning Lindsay for decades, since 2001. And it wasn't for her keeping me upgraded, keeping my head up for a lot of people, doing my volunteer works and stuff, but I love it. I tell these people where to go, where to get showers and foods, and they take my advice and they do it. It just keeps me in prayers. And I cry and cry my heart out for these people. And I appreciate y'all doing what y'all doing for these people out here on these streets. But I'm going to keep my head up. And it's best for if y'all do the same thing for me.
Thank you for the work you're doing with your neighbors.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we've got a bunch of hands going
Everybody's
this way.
pointing to this one gentleman.
We'll
Over
bring him
here.
here.
We're gonna.
Y'all are all pointing at someone. Who are you pointing at?
I'm just going to help with interpretation on this one.
Mi nombre es Johanna, soy de Dignidad Obrera y mi pregunta es especialmente para Freddy Ocano, pero también invito a otros candidatos a pronunciar respaldo a nuestra lucha.
My name is Johanna, and I'm a member of Workers' Dignity. My question is especially for Freddie O'Connell, but I also invite other candidates to support the struggle we're bringing to you today.
Vivo en Enia y trabajo en la construcción. Como muchos, yo trabajé para una compañía multimillonaria, pero a mí no me pagaron mi salario.
I live in Antioch, and I work in construction. Like a lot of us, I worked for multi-million-dollar companies, but they never paid me my wages.
En mi caso, trabajé instalando el sistema de aire acondicionado en proyectos enormes de Century, Ford y demás. Hace más de un año no me han pagado más de $20,000 que me deben.
In my situation, I worked for the giant Century Farms project in Antioch, where for more than a year now, they haven't paid me the $20,000 I'm owed for installing the air conditioning.
Los responsables del proyecto son Odalcre McDonald desde su oficina en Krill Hill y su constructora Tirikey desde Musperboro. Ambos son empresas billonarias.
Those responsible for the Century Farms project are Oldacre McDonald, with an office in Green Hills, and their construction contractor TDK from Murfreesboro. Both are billion-dollar companies.
La amenaza más fuerte a muchos de nosotros como trabajadores de construcción y nuestra habilidad de vivir en esta ciudad es que nos roban por nuestro trabajo a pesar de que lucran tanto encima de nuestro propio sudor.
The biggest threat for us as construction workers in this city and our ability to stay and live in this city is that they steal our work, despite the fact that they make so much money off of our sweat.
Los edificios que trabajé son apartamentos. A pesar de que no me pagaron por el trabajo, los apartamentos ya están llenos y los están rentando por casi $2,000 al mes.
The buildings I built are apartments. Even though they never paid me for my work, They're full now, and Elmington Property Management is charging over $2,000 per unit.
Pregunto a Freddy Ocano y a los demás candidatos si están dispuestos a pronunciarse públicamente en contra del robo de salario ocurriendo en el megaproyecto Century Farms.
So I'm asking Freddie O'Connell and anyone else who's willing to say it, if you're willing to make a statement today against the wage theft that's occurring at the Century Farms mega project.
Thank you for that, and that question. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm happy for this to be the statement. Wage theft is a reprehensible act. It is, as you have said, it's a stealing of work besides wages. It's a stealing of dignity. I've worked with workers' dignity repeatedly over the past decade to reclaim and recover thousands of dollars of stolen and lost wages. I'm happy to intervene in your scenario, and we'll continue to work with workers' dignity and other laborers that are in organizations that are trying to fight wage theft. It's hard because in Tennessee, we have something called the Wage Protection Act that limits local jurisdictions from applying penalties specifically for wage theft. But this is why vocal action on the part of city leaders matters, and it's why I've been proud to stand with workers' dignity in the past and happy to again.
Thank you for that. Heidi, we'll go Sharon, then we'll go Jeff.
Yes, I will also support that. Thank you for the work that you do with workers' dignity. I support collective bargaining. I am endorsed by, I think, the only one endorsed here by a union. I'm endorsed by the iron workers and was endorsed by all the unions in my congressional race because I fight for workers and against right to work in this incredibly regressive state where we are drawing multinational corporations here because we have cheap labor. That is what people are coming here for. And the people that are getting hurt by it are the people who live here. And that is why we need people who will stand up for the people who live here. And that is exactly what you are doing with workers' dignity. And I want to do everything I can to help you do that.
All right, thank you. Sharon.
So when I had a workforce development program that served as a clearinghouse for employees just like you to mitigate this kind of problem. But administration in the mayor's office dismantled that workforce development program because we were putting people to work just like you, and we had those protection concerns in place already to address the issues to prevent it from happening, because the best solution is prevention. And we did that, and they knew what we were doing, along with creating a driver's license restoration program in order to get more people hired. So yes, I would absolutely stand with you because I knew that this was happening. They knew that I knew it, and that's why they dismantled the program so they could go ahead and do the work that is hampering the people like you. So thank you so much for what it is that you do.
All right. Jeff.
Joanna, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for asking us to do this. I'm very happy to condemn wage theft wherever it occurs in our community because it's wrong and it should be beneath the dignity of the people who are trying to build buildings. That shouldn't require sacrificing people to do that work. And it shouldn't require sacrificing what should be the values of our city to do that work. Now, as to what the next mayor's got to do on this, as Freddie mentioned, we're going to be navigating a world of places where we're facing state preemption. That's true on wage. That's true on construction safety, where when we put on requirements at the local level, we're seeing the state come up and say, no, you can't do that. It's going to take a lot of creativity and dogged commitment from the next mayor to make sure that you are finding ways to go after these problems regardless of how they're coming up. Part of that's naming and shaming, like when people are falling below what's required of responsible business actors, the mayor doesn't need to be afraid to step into that space. Second, we should think a lot more, even more when we're talking about the dollars that we're spending as a community when the city's building projects. We should be very careful in the way we're doing procurements to ensure that when we've got safety violation after safety violation, that we're shutting unsafe places down, that we're working, finding the pathways to go after that and to protect the people's right and ability to work a living, to earn a living. And I'll say I'm also someone who has already received the endorsement of labor unions in this race, and I have in every race that I've ever run for public office.
All right, thank you. Vivian, finally, and then we'll go to some more questions.
Well, I just hate that this is happening to you. But you know, when we think about how America has been for people that look like us, brown and colored people, or people of color, what have you, stealing of wages and getting free labor is what they've done. And we have to speak it out. We have to speak it out and confront it. You are speaking to a leader right here that oversees 87 amazing staffers and a $10.1 million budget as the assessor of property. And one of the things that I looked at, it was the fact that people were being paid not competitively when I went into that office. It went from $32,000 to $33,000, and now entry level is close to $50,000. And that's because I did not work for the mayor, but I worked with the mayor. But I worked for you, the people. And I saw that they were needing the money to be able to thrive. And my point is that when we missed giving someone their $1,500 after 6 months of being there, and that person did not speak up, we made it retroactive. Someone did not speak up, and I said, don't ever do that, because we're not perfect. We're leaders, but we're not perfect. I want to give you your fries that goes with that shake. So when we go forward in reference to what you're doing and what is happening, and you're being shortchanged big time, I think that this city should not work with those type of developers again. I think they should be taken off of the list. And this makes me mad, because we have other people we can work with. But how dare they take advantage of the people who are here who have helped to make this city great. And we have to take them off the list, and they change their names to another company to try to get back on the list. We need to seek them out too.
All right.
So I stand with you. I am a labor union. I'm a union member as United Steelworkers. My husband's United Steelworkers. I'm a member of the Tennessee State Employees Association, which is not a union, but it's one that fights against compression and all the things that's not fair to state employees. And I have been endorsed by the Amalgamated Transit Union. And the reason why I was endorsed by them, because they know that I will fight.
All right.
They know that I will walk with them, and they know that I've been with them even when I was on the Metro Council since 2003. I stand with you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Okay. One more response. We got Jim Gingrich wants to respond, and then we're going to move on to a couple more questions. And unfortunately, y'all, we're going to have to wrap up the proceedings.
To help me to pay me, and I am here again. They don't pay me yet. So we need to start with the schools. We need to show that kids don't steal money to the people, you know? So what do you wanna help me with the MMPS? They promised me to pay me. So who's gonna pay me?
How about this? Show of hands if you agree that, if you can say this right now, should one of you become mayor, would you start an investigation into seeing all the contractors and all the people who have been cut out of money, particularly in contracts with the city? Will you create that to look into it? All right. Jim.
I don't want to give a speech, but if you, ma'am, give me your contact information, sir, give me your contact information before I leave, I will fix this if I'm mayor.
All right. Thank you very much. We've got another question right here from this woman up front, please.
Hi, Joy. I'm a member of the disabled community, and I'm advocating for not just myself, but everybody that I have advocated and worked for the last half century. So my question, my comments, a couple things first, is in 2013 and 14, I made offer on 3 properties that were TIF. And then in 14, I ended up winning a property that wasn't TIF, and I lived there. It was supposed to be ADA, 100%. And I'm here to say that the floor, the regulations of the floor, are not sufficient for some of us. And currently, there's 9 days left to make comments on the Federal Register for upgrades to the Section 504 regulations. So anybody that's listening, maybe go and check that out. But investors have come in and they've bought all of the accessible housing. I have looked every day since 2018 trying to find a house that does not have a step on the front. Even the senior housing communities have stairs. Rentals, right now I'm a homeowner, but there may be a day where I'm going to have to go into a rental, and right now that means senior housing, and I don't think that I want to make that switch at this point. We're all an aging community, but there's nothing out there to buy. And it's not too hard to add codes, some universal design. I realize that it takes zoning and that 99% of housing is built for able bodies, but you're leaving out the fact that you're going to age and there's not going to be any place for you to live. And mostly that the investors are retrofitting these accessible homes and then renting them to able bodies. And so not just the federal government needs to update their regulations, but our zoning department needs to be more flexible. We need more incentives, better boundaries. Just quadplexes, for instance. You can put a fence in the front and a blind person can have a place for their animal to relieve themselves. But I have looked, in 2018 to 2020, I looked at 7 different townhome communities, and they're not FHA covered, Fair Housing Act. They don't have to have the curb ramps. They don't have to have the handicap parking spaces. How many of them, when I went to go to the mailbox kiosk, had a curb that you have to mount? So I'm asking y'all, I'm not asking for hundreds of universal design homes, but a place like the fairgrounds, that is a community for someone like me that can roll everywhere, that can get entertainment, that can get education, that can get 50 forward, that can get housing, and hopefully a Trader Joe's next soon. And I love going all through Redwood, Houston, because it's become so rollable. But there are things that just, it's just hard. So think about that as you make new regulations. And it's not just about rentals. So TIF homes, where are they? Did they go away?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
That's Sharon Hurt.
So I understand exactly what you're talking about, and that's the reason why I say that we would make sure that we address that Fair Housing Act and ensure that that is there. It just bothered me. When I first came to Nashville, I couldn't understand why we didn't have sidewalks, because I'm originally from Memphis, and we have sidewalks, and we used to walk everywhere. But here they don't have them. And as a council member at large, it was not something that I actually could do. That is for the district council members. And I know that we spent millions of dollars trying to improve that, but as mayor, I would make one of those a priority to ensure that sidewalks are there and that they are the Fair Housing Act regulated, to ensure that people who need them the most will be able to have them and use them. I can promise you that.
All right. Viv, you want to say something?
Yes.
Want to say something?
One of the things I want to do as mayor is make sure that we have a grant department. Some of the things that I have been studying, FTA, Federal Transit Administration, and EPA, they have a lot of grants that are not being tapped into, that we could be tapping in to ourselves to make these happen. Single level homes, single level units for our special ed and our disabled, and those that are transitioning into to seniors. But we have to make sure that we tap into these grants that are available to us to make sure that these things happen for us.
All right, thank you. Heidi, real quick, and then we're going to get to our last question, everybody.
I promise to be short, but I serve on the board of the Rochelle Center, which is a board that provides housing for disabled adults. And this is something that we care deeply about. And I just want you to know, not only as mayor, but in my capacity on that board, that's something that we'll advocate for. So please get my number. I'd be happy to discuss it with you more.
All right. We're going to go to our last question. We have to finish up here because the library is closing, y'all. And as much as I love to read, I don't want to get locked in here.
This
Last
question
question.
is for Matt Wilshire, and we do not need all 7 others of you to bloviate about this, but to answer it in your own hearts. If you are elected mayor, will you recognize we saw that the median income now is $102,000 and $60,000 or $80,000 is not affordable or workforce for homeless people or for low-income workers for this. So will you recognize that you must devote a large amount of public resources to building housing that working people and homeless people can actually afford?
Yes. Yes,
Thank you for that.
Yes, and I'll be very specific about it. So essentially the federal government has allowed MDHA to have a certain number of units they will fund out of the operating dollars. Those number of units decreased over time through the Hope 6 program and other efforts. There are an additional 1,000 units that we can build that I moved to MDHA to actually build where we can receive the operating subsidy from the federal government so that the resident of that unit, no matter what they make, you only qualify to live in housing if you make less than 80% of area median income, but no matter what you make, $0, $20,000, $40,000, your rent is 30% of your income.
About metro resources, not about federal resources.
So what I am saying is I have committed. It was the plan that I helped launch, and moved to MDHA to implement, to build out those other 1,000 units of effectively Section 9. It's actually rad. It's a whole FDA thing. We don't need, a whole HUD thing we don't need to get into. But there are another 1,000 units that we can build. And the federal government has already committed to fund the operating subsidy of it. It is 1,000 units we don't have today because of decisions that have been made over the decades. I literally changed jobs, launched a plan to make those units come to our city. That is what I am committed to. It's what I've got in my policy paper. I know how to do this. From my finance background, my experience at MDHA, and the commitments that I've made, I know how to do this and have already started making progress on it.
All right.
The lobby is cleaned up already, so could we squeeze in one more question? We got folks out there cleaning up now.
All right, we'll do one more question.
Okay, I have a question for Councilmember Hurt. I understand that you're very concerned about gentrification and development coming in. It's sort of a dual question, sorry, but it is just for Councilmember Hurt. None of you this doesn't apply to any of you. So first of all, have you ever voted against a rezoning in District 19 in your 8 years in office? And secondly, if you are concerned about people being displaced, why did you choose to sign on to a rezoning bill that your colleague in his district was attempting to slow down to make sure that people didn't get displaced? This was River Chase. You signed on against his will at the behest of the developers and the lobbyists. So those two questions, please.
In terms of me signing on to any rezoning for or voting against anything rezoned in District 19, I probably did not, because it has been proven over and over again that councilmatic courtesy is given. And not in all cases have I not done that because I have singly gone against it. But in District 19, most of the time I have spoken with the council member to find out exactly what was going on. And as they say, we should trust the councilman. So it can't be so bad, right? No. It is very bad because the district is being gentrified. The demographics have changed, and it's a historic community. In terms of River Chase, I was asked to sign on to that, not by the developers, but by another council member, because they thought that I would be helpful to Councilmember Parker in doing that. But as I looked at everything that was there, knowing that the bill was going to pass because of the other council members who were voting in favor of it, I asked for them to increase the amount of affordable housing that they were going to have on that bill, and they did, went up to 25 affordable housing units. So every time we do something, it's not always the... Can I answer the question, please?
Exactly, please, let Ms. Hurt answer. Thank you.
So everything that I do with the right heart in mind for what I believe is the best for the people, and I am not bought or bossed by anyone. So for you to say that this is something that I did for developers is not true. That is not who I am. That's not what I do. And perhaps unlike some of my colleagues that are on the council that you've spoken of.
All right, well, thank you very much. That's her answer. Unfortunately, y'all, we have to end it here. I just wait, but hold up, before you go, we've got a call to action from India Pongarcher with Open Table Nashville. I want you all, round of applause for her, and then some quick closing remarks.
Anyone want to take that?
What about LGBT housing? Like 120% homeless, 1 in 5 trans people have been homeless, traffic. Like, I'm the only nonprofit in the state serving them. Why?
That's not true. Streetwork serves that population of people. Yes, we do. We provide housing for them. We put them in, we put the temporary housing that we do, we put them in hotels very often and pay for that until we're able to put them in housing. So we do that.
Okay,
and
we're going to have to
doing it.
cut this off, sorry. So I don't want to silence anyone, but this is why we wanted to put this together, right? Like all the other forums were touching on housing, touching on homelessness, but we really wanted to put together an event that was trying to capture as many questions as possible. And I think just the variety of questions, thank you. The variety of questions and the passion and the emotion that we saw tonight just goes to show how just really critically this issue and how much someone's housing status, how that truly affects every single person in our city. So I just wanted to say thank you. We're cutting closing statements because we started late. But thank you so much. There's a survey, and we're going to get the results posted either tonight or tomorrow morning. Please fill out that survey and hand it on the basket on your way out. But also, thank you for the candidates. I know we went over time, and we put you on the spot with trivia questions, but thank you so much, and we hope everybody learned something here tonight and continue the conversations.
All right, again, thank you all for coming out. We understand that emotions run high, but that just means we all care about this city and the people who are here. Thank you to Sharon Hurt, Jim Gingrich, Freddie O'Connell, Heidi Campbell, Vivian Wilhoit, Jeff Yarbrough, Natisha Brooks, and Matt Wilshire. Thank you all, everyone.